Something's creeping, it's right outside. So come on in, and don't be shy. We've got ghosts and UFOs. Brace yourself, get ready for the show. Don't be afraid of the dark. The fun's about to start. Nightmares, our tales will inspire. Oh, tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Have you heard tell of a demon next door? Or maybe a cryptid on the lake shore? There's nothing too strange for us here. So if you're ready, stamp out your fear. Don't be afraid of the dark. The fun's about to start. Nightmares, our tales will inspire. Tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Whoa, whoa.
Welcome back, campers, to episode 7 of the Scaredy Campfires. Gather close because tonight the flames burn a little colder and the shadows stretch just a little longer. We've received stories that'll make you question what lurks just beyond the glow of the fire. Have you ever felt watched even when you're alone? Have you ever heard whispers in the silence or footsteps that seem to follow you when no one else is there? Tonight, we're bringing you stories of the encounters that defy explanation, of things that creep into the edges of reality, waiting for the perfect moment to make themselves known. So, stoke the fire, pull your blankets tight, and brace yourselves, because once you hear these stories, you might never look at the dark the same way again. Imagine possessing a mind so powerful that mere thoughts seem to shape reality, where fleeting wishes manifest into life-altering events. Tonight we delve into a chilling account from Reddit user u/chronicallyep, who shares an unsettling journey of unintended consequences and the haunting burden of a mind that might be too powerful. Here goes our first story for the night. So, I made a Reddit account just to write about a weird phenomenon I experienced some time ago. This is a bit personal and a few of my close friends and relatives know about this. Some of them believe that they're just plain coincidences and I'm overreacting, while others told me that's indeed not normal and these coincidences are too much. The thing is, when I was little, I was about 7 years old or so, someone asked me what was my favorite number. An innocent question, I answered 51 without thinking about it too much. I was sure something related to that specific number would happen, but I didn't know what or when. Some years later, when I was 13 years old, my mother passed away from cancer. She was exactly 51 years old when that happened. That made me feel terribly bad and guilty. When I grew up, I was becoming more and more convinced that it was just a bad coincidence and nothing more. But for some reason, after my mom passed away, more weird stuff happened. So I was in high school and there was a certain teacher that pissed me off so much. I thought to myself several times, I want him to have some kind of surgery and go away for the rest of the year. I was surprised when I noticed that in the following trimester, in my country, school years go by trimesters, a substitute teacher appeared. She told us our teacher had cataract surgery and he wouldn't return to school until next year. Of course, I was a bit taken aback. I have to admit, I was a resentful teen. I was full of rage and hatred, maybe because I was passing through a period of grief and depression caused by my mother's death. Now I regret my actions and my thoughts, especially because the last wish I had almost killed someone. I was in my last year of high school. Again, a teacher was the victim, but I felt different about her. While I wanted the other teacher, who had a surgery, go away for a year, this time I wanted her to die. And I wished so badly the following thing: I hope she dies in a car crash. What I believed was simply a stupid but intense thought actually happened again, and the consequences for her were a lot worse. Luckily, she survived, but she had to be hospitalized because her condition was critical. She had a fatal car accident and broke several bones. Again, I have to confess another thing. I really wanted her gone, so when I found out she was alive, I felt bad. I'm serious when I say I was a spiteful, nasty person in that time. But deep down, I was a bit scared about what I had done. Not only the two teachers having to be hospitalized, but in the same exact conditions I wished them to be. It was too specific for being a simple coincidence. After the tragic event, I decided the best thing to do was not wishing bad things or death to anyone. I didn't want to be the cause of death of someone, and I still don't want to. I don't know if this story makes any sense or if I'm overthinking about it too much, but the thing is, since that, I've never wished anyone bad things. Or not in the same intensity I used to. I feel extremely guilty for those two teachers, especially for the last one, and in no way justifies the harm that I indirectly caused to them. So, this is a way to vent about my past experiences too. Now I'm an adult and I didn't wish or wanted bad things for anyone, even if I really don't like them. I learned my lesson and I think it's better to focus that energy on something more productive instead. The path of hatred and vengeance only will lead you to more disgrace. I need advice about what happened. Do y'all think they are simple coincidences or something more? It only happened with the bad wishes or coincidences, and the fact that it's possible I was the only one who killed my own mother for the 51 thing makes me feel horrible. Of course, I didn't wish her death. Never. I loved her, and I still do, but maybe things would be different if I answered with another number? Would she still be alive? Would the two teachers not have suffered everything they suffered? The possibility of me being related to all of that is horrible. To this day, the storyteller is left questioning the boundaries between coincidence and the unsettling power of their own thoughts. Are these events mere happenstance, or does the mind possess a darker influence over reality than we dare to acknowledge? One thing is certain: some mysteries of the human psyche are as profound as they are terrifying. Isolation can make the mind play tricks on us, or so we all tell ourselves. But what if the eerie moments we brush off aren't tricks at all? In our second story from Reddit user u/moneyinterview 6319, we see a routine trip to the bathroom in a COVID quarantine center takes a bizarre turn, leaving them questioning whether they encountered something beyond the ordinary. This happened back in 2021 during COVID. My little sister, my grandfather, and I all had COVID, so we were sent to a COVID center. The center was a government-owned building, recently built to be a nurse training center. However, due to the pandemic, they had to postpone the opening. My sister and I shared a room, while my grandfather was placed in a separate room for special care since he was elderly. We stayed there for about a week. The building was surrounded by trees with no houses nearby. It was pretty isolated. The first night I didn't notice anything unusual. The second night was the same, just a boring day and night. Since our room had a window facing the corridor, I could see the moonlight shining through it while I lay in bed. Occasionally I'd see people walking by, their shadows flickering through the window. I wasn't much of a socializer, so I didn't bother to interact. I figured they were just going to use the shared restroom. The restroom was small, like a public toilet with only 2 stalls. On the third night, around 2 a.m., I woke up needing to pee. Still half asleep, I stumbled my way to the toilet. When I got there, I heard the sound of water running from the inside. Assuming someone was using it, I waited, but even after 10 minutes, the water was still running. There were no other sounds, no voices, no phone noises, nothing. It felt strange because you'd usually hear something when people were inside. I was on the verge of peeing myself, so I knocked on the door and said, I really have to pee. Are you almost done? There was no reply. I knocked again, but this time the running water stopped. Both stalls felt silent. I expected someone to come out, but no one did. The silence was unsettling. I knocked once more, and to my surprise, the locked stall door swung open from the force of my knock. Inside, it was pitch dark. No one was there. Weirdly enough, I wasn't scared. I just really had to pee. I quickly went inside. As I relieved myself, I kept thinking about how clearly I had heard the sound of water running into a bucket. But now the bucket was completely empty. The floor was dry, with no signs of water. I felt ridiculous, angry even, for wasting over 10 minutes waiting for no one. After I was done, I went back to my room and fell asleep. Maybe it was because I was still half asleep, I kind of brushed it off. After we got out from the COVID center, I was sharing how I spend my days at the COVID center to my friends and family. I remembered that night, so I told them. Some said it must be a ghost, and some said it was just my mind playing tricks on me. What do you think it is? Was it just exhaustion or a restless mind, or did something unseen lurk in the shadows of the empty stall? Some mysteries fade with time, while others linger, silent, unexplained, and waiting for someone else to notice. What do you think really happened that night? Some childhood memories fade with time, but others remain vivid, etched in our minds like fragments of a past we can never relive. But if one day those cherished moments were met with denial, in this eerie account from Reddit user u/Radio Zeppelin, a simple question about an old friend spirals into a disturbing mystery. A friendship no one else remembers. Campers, our third story goes here. Someone told me this is a place to share my story, so here I am. I, 19, male, have lived in a small housing society for my entire life. 2 years ago, we moved from the third floor down to the second due to some seepage problems. I didn't want to leave my childhood home, but I guess just a floor down of the same building won't matter much. Anyways, after moving, I started reminiscing about old memories and friends I had not contacted in several years. One of them was Alam, a kid who lived next to my apartment on the same floor. I remember he was a year older than me and probably my first genuine friend. He lived with his parents, traditional lovely Muslim family. I am a Hindu, so celebrating Eid with him when we were 7 or 8 before he left was something I cherish to this day. I remember our favorite show was this Japanese series called Ryokendo, which filled our little imaginative heads with ideas to draw stuff or play pretend. Sweet memories or so, I thought. I randomly asked my parents today if they remember Alam and his family or had any contact info on them. My parents told me they didn't understand. I repeated, the kid I used to play with lived right across the floor. They looked at each other in confusion and told me we never had a Muslim family as our neighbors. I genuinely thought my parents are pulling my leg, but no, they don't remember them at all. I asked my friends if they remember my friend from back in the day, and they told me somewhere along the lines of, I thought a newlywed couple with 2 babies lived there. True, but I asked them this was before them. They had no clue. What is happening to me? Am I going insane? Did Arlam and his family ever truly exist, or has something inexplicably erased them from the world, except from one person's memory? When those around you insist the past never happened, how do you trust what you know to be real? Perhaps some connections are never meant to be remembered. Some houses carry more than just memories. They hold echoes of something unseen, something that lingers long after the previous tenants have gone. For Reddit user u/acceptable_raise_336, who shares tonight's fourth story with us, a childhood home became the backdrop for an unsettling series of encounters. The shadowy figures, unexplained illnesses, and a glowing, sentient orb that seemed to watch them in the night. But were these just coincidences, or was something far more sinister at play? From 10 to 13, my family rented a house. It was nice sized in the suburbs and was built in the mid-50s, I believe. When we moved in, it was already furnished. I was in my first bedroom. I changed rooms 3 times. There was a desk in it and I was doing my homework. I was 10 or 11 at this time. I see out of the corner of my eye a man in black walking slightly behind me. I didn't see him fully. I saw from his shoulder to about his wrist. But he appeared, walked out of my peripheral, and when I turned around, there was nothing. Just myself staring back at me in a mirror. But I could feel something was wrong. I tried to go back to my homework, but I felt very uneasy, like something was in my room, that I grabbed my stuff and ran downstairs. The next time I saw something, I was sitting at a table when, and out of my peripheral again, I saw something. This time, a woman in a dark pink and purple fleece. I know it was a woman because this time I saw half of her torso and chest, plus the shoulder and arm, but again, I turn around and no one was there. I should mention there are a lot of mirrors in that house, none of which my family put there, and I later saw some spiritual people say that you should never have secondhand mirrors because you don't know what they've seen. So maybe there was bad stuff from that. The next time something strange happened, I had switched rooms with my mum because in my room I was not sleeping well. I started to sleepwalk, my neck and back started hurting from sleeping on that bed, and I also became very ill. I had the stomach flu for a week, but it got so bad I had to be hospitalized and kept overnight for rehydration and a medication, I think, through an IV. But once I was in the hospital and had the IV, I stopped throwing up and recovered in pretty much a day. Now, when I switched rooms with my mum, it was night, everyone was asleep, but I had my door open unlike everyone else. I woke up to a light illuminating the hallway, but at first I wasn't scared. I felt at peace almost. Then it was getting brighter, moving to my room. Once I saw the full thing, I felt my stomach drop. My blood ran cold. It was a big orb of shining light, and it was moving on its own. I don't know why I was so scared, but it was moving towards my room. It was sentient, I know it was, because it stopped at my doorframe because I was awake. I was staring at it, and I know it was staring back at me. It was just floating there. But I had a phone response from the first time to now. This was all happening in a year, so I was 11 or maybe just turned 12. I really felt in that moment like my life was in danger. I couldn't bear to look at it anymore, so I pulled the blanket over my head and was just waiting for something to happen. I eventually fell back asleep, and when I woke up, it was gone and everything seemed normal. The next time something happened, my family and I were watching the Eliza Lam, I hope I spelled her name right, documentary on Netflix. We hadn't finished it when my grandmother and I made a makeshift Ouija board from cardboard paper and a shot glass as a planchette. We actually summoned a spirit, and I believe this because we asked it a question if the goth guy from the doc killed Eliza, and it said no. The next day we watched the documentary from where we left off, and it says the guy was cleared of suspicion. But my grandmother made a mistake. When we were done talking to the ghost, I told her that we need to say goodbye, and she took her fingers off the glass and said goodbye without forcibly moving the glass to goodbye. I told her no, and that we have to hurry to fix it, so we tried to say goodbye the right way, and I thought everything was good. The next day I wake up and the fridge is leaking water. We call the landlord and he sends a repairman, and they have no idea what is wrong, why the fridge is leaking, how it's leaking, where the leak is originating from. Nothing. The leaking eventually stops, but when the walking in the attic starts, I would hear footsteps and rustling in the attic many times throughout the day. I was so sure someone was in there. I had my aunt go up and look, and no one was there. I would also hear footsteps walking around upstairs even when I was there home alone. Then the landlord wanted to move back in, so we left, and the footsteps, things breaking, seeing entities and partial people, extreme illnesses, everything all stopped in the house I'm in now. Also, forgot to mention earlier that I had to move out of my mom's old room after we switched because our house would become infested with stink bugs. Winter and summer, there was always stink bugs. Then I eventually found out they were congregating in my room. I pulled back the curtain, and on the back the entire thing was filled with stink bugs. I never had an infestation like that, and I eventually moved bedrooms again, but if anyone can help me understand what it is all, was especially the glowing orb, I would appreciate it. The moment they left, the disturbances stopped. No more figures in the mirrors, no more footsteps in the attic, no more sickness creeping through the walls. Was the house simply cursed, or had they unknowingly invited something in? Something that only let go when they finally walked away. Some questions remain unanswered, but one thing is clear: not all hauntings end when you move out. Some childhood homes are filled with warmth and nostalgia. Others, like you/understanding know 2897, hold something else. It started with glimpses, shadowy figures disappearing when looked at directly. The laughter of a boy whose face they never saw, heavy footsteps echoing through an empty house, a deep, tired sigh from someone who was never there. It was eerie, but they learned to live with it. Until one night, everything changed. Our fifth story comes from Reddit. I'm going to tell you some of the experiences I've had at my parents' house, and let me know if you want to hear more. Okay, to begin with, growing up, me and my siblings always saw some shadowy figures, one of a boy and one of a man. We could only see the outline of an all-black figure, so I assumed it was a little boy and a man by the shape of the shadow. I'd see these figures out of the corner of my eye, and when you'd turn to look at them, they'd vanish. The figures would mainly be in the bathroom upstairs or the bathroom down in the basement. My siblings and I also had numerous experiences of hearing heavy footsteps walking around the house when home alone or when all together in one room, which we attributed to being the old man ghost in our house. The kid ghost would like to play tricks on us, once whispering my name, then laughing as I ran back upstairs towards my siblings, and would constantly move our toys around to scare us. I'd also always hear the old man letting out a deep and heavy sigh as if tired, which is what a lot of old people in my life do. I'll tell you one of the main experiences me and my brother and my dad had in that house. So me and my brother one day decided to decorate our room. We went into the basement and grabbed a lot of old candles and creepy old paintings that my mom collected from garage sales, then left in the basement to collect dust. The final thing we brought to our room was a live baby tree that was in a pot. After going to bed that night and waking up, my brother comes to me super excited and tells me how he saw a ghost last night. He told me how it was the ghost of an older man and how it was bound to the tree. The ghost floated above the ground and was see-through, being more visible the higher you looked. Its face was very visible, but the further you looked down, the more transparent he became. You could not see his feet at all. He glowed bluish-grey but basically had no colour, and was wearing tattered clothes, I believe. My brother told me how when the ghost floated too far away, a couple of feet, away from the tree, it would disappear, then reappear right back at the tree in the center of our room. He also told me he reached out to touch the ghost, and when he did it it grabbed his hand feeling icy, then disappeared and reappeared at the tree to continue floating around our room. I believed him, I think, but wanted to be cool as I am the younger brother, so I lied to him saying that I see ghosts all the time, and once saw the ghost of a three-headed dragon when going downstairs to get water, knowing damn well I'm too scared to go downstairs to get water alone at night. He looks amazed and excited. I know I'm very cool, and he believed me because of what he had just experienced. Well, the next night it was my turn to see the ghost. I fell asleep on the couch downstairs by accident while watching TV, as I am known to do. So my dad, being a great dad, carried me upstairs, but also being a great dad, didn't bother to put a blanket over me. So a bit later I wake up from being too cold and reach for my blanket, but as I do, I see a fucking man floating around my room. Unlike my brother, I'm a scaredy cat. The ghost looked and acted exactly as I described above, but yeah, I screamed like I was getting murdered, and as I did, the ghost floated towards me. As it got close, it disappeared and reappeared at the tree only to float towards me again, as I began to cry harder and harder. My dad rushed into our room looking for a threat and sees the ghost, but just flips the lights on, and like that, the ghost is gone. You could only see in the dark, I guess, but I asked my dad if he could see it, and he said he could. I asked if it was a ghost, and he lied and said it was a reflection, so I wouldn't be afraid like a good parent. But then I asked how a reflection can look like that, and how it can float around our room, and once again, like a good parent, he tells me he was trying not to scare me, and that it is a ghost. Then he tells me to sleep in my mom's room, and we cuddle as I have nightmares. What's crazy is that my dad and brother slept in our room, with the lights off, sleeping with a ghost just casually floating above their heads. The next morning, my mom puts the tree outside and we never physically see the ghost again. My experiences goes back to groans and footsteps for a while, until the next main event that I can tell you about in another post. The moment their mother took the tree outside, the ghost was never seen again, but the echoes of its presence, footsteps, sighs, an unseen watcher in the dark remained. Was it truly bound to the tree? Or was the tree just a doorway for something far older and more restless? And if it was only the first main event, what came next? Some mysteries whisper from the shadows, barely brushing against our reality, until we go looking for them. That's when the whispers become voices. That's when the unknown reaches back. Tonight's sixth chilling tale comes from Reddit user u/ghost_story1, who shares an eerie encounter with a spirit box, an unseen presence in the forest, and a warning that still lingers in their mind. What started as a harmless experiment between two siblings quickly unraveled into something much darker, something that seemed to know them and fear them. One day, it was just me and my sister at home alone. My sister, 19, female, downloaded an app that basically worked like a spirit box, and both my sister and I thought it would be funny to try it out. So I blindfolded my sister with an old scarf of mine, and my sister used her earbuds to hear through the app. At first, it was normal, until my sister started hearing words like, "Help." I asked who was this, and it didn't answer, only silence. I asked again, who was it? And this time it said, "Attached." I asked, "Who are you attached to?" And it said, "Red hair." My sister dyed her hair red a month before. For confirmation, I asked, "Are you attached to my sister?" And it said, "Yes." I was kind of spooked and asked, "How many of you are there?" Only to receive, "We are here." I asked if it was in the house, and I only got the word forest and "come find us." The town I live in has a forest on the west side of the town, and 3 of my friends live there. I asked again, "Who is this?" And I received a response, "He's coming," like anyone. I asked, "Who is coming?" only to get, "He is," and run. I asked, "Who is he?" and I got, "Don't speak of him," It was weird. I asked some more questions, but all I can confirm was that there is either an entity or a demon in the forest. But I decided to try to change the topic and asked, "How did you die?" And I got the words bombing. It turns out back in World War II era, there was unexploded hand grenades in a building on the main street of the town I live in. And turns out back in 2006, a contractor found those grenades. I got my sister out of the Estes method and told her about what I found out. Then I suggested I go under, so I did. My responses wasn't like my sister. Mine sounded more panicked, scared, saying words like run and get out. And when my sister asked who she should run away from, the thing said her. My sister asked if the spirit was afraid of me, and the thing said yes, and dark hair. My hair is a dark brown. There was more that was said, and I can't really remember, but the one thing I'll always remember was hearing a loud male's voice that said, "Get out!" I was spooked and got out of the Estes method. After taking a little break, I went under again, but this time I only received silence and words like, "Not safe, run, and get out." After all that, we can confirm that there was spirits attached to my sister, and the spirits are maybe afraid of me for some reason, and also there is an entity or something in the forest. To this day, the person is left wondering what they truly encountered that night. Were they speaking to lost souls, or was something far more sinister trying to reach them? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, why did the voices seem so afraid? One thing is certain, the forest still stands, silent and waiting, and some things are better left undisturbed. Campers, there's something about the deep south where the nights are darker, the land is older, and the stories passed down feel more like warnings than mere tales. Some things just can't be explained, no matter how much time passes. Tonight's seventh count comes from Reddit user u/AcesBlue99, who shares eerie family stories passed down from their grandmother. Stories of ghostly figures, impossible occurrences, and the kind of moment that leave even the strongest believers shaken. Whether it was a trick of the storm or something far more unsettling, one thing is certain, some things are meant to stay in the dark. The story goes, my grandma used to tell my brothers during the summer when we used to stay with her stories, and considering we're black and from the south back in those days, things weren't nowhere near as convenient as today. Well, back in her day in the country, they lived in shacks, and there were no streetlights whatsoever. Her father had a farm with pigs, chickens, and whatnots, and other people lived in the area. Well, at night it's pitch black dark unless it's a bright moon. On the side of the house she lived in was a path through the woods that her uncle would always walk through to get to the bootleggers because he was a drunk. Well, one night there was a lightning storm and heavy rain, and they all were like her uncle would have to make the trek back during the storm. Well, right as you come out the woods on that path, they had about 8 sheep and some goats in this makeshift fence. My grandma was watching it rain and the lightning flashed, and she saw her uncle stumbling drunk coming out of the woods on that path, and she noticed all the sheep were all facing in the direction of her uncle, but due to the flash of lightning, that's the only time she could see. Well, it flashed again, and this time all the sheep were at the fence, all standing still, facing her uncle, and her uncle had stopped as well, facing the sheep. She didn't understand what was going on. Well, the lightning flashes again, and this time the sheep were out of the fence and had surrounded the uncle, yet just not moving. How they got outside the fence and were all facing him in a circle, she didn't understand. Again, lightning flashed, and now the sheep were back in the fence and no longer paying attention to him, yet he took off running. She said he busted in the house, pretty much sobered up due to what happened, and wouldn't walk past the sheep again, nor help with feeding them or anything. Now, my grandma was a strong Christian woman, so she wouldn't lie about things such as this, but she says it happened because she saw it happen. Here's another side story she told us as well. She knew a person back in those days that had to walk almost 3 miles to school every day, and the kid's father always walked this kid to school. Well, the father died, but for almost a month he continued to walk this kid to school, and when the kid would tell people, no one believed him. On the last day, though, the father told the kid he couldn't walk with him anymore and to remember what he taught him. The kid would ask, was he really dead during those times, and the father would just smile. I have many others too. I guess growing up in the South, you just get told these stories. I may have to tell the story of the witch next. Generations have passed, but these stories remain, whispered in hushed tones, carried by those who remember. Were they visions brought on by fear, strange coincidences, or proof that the past has a way of walking alongside us, even when we can't see it? Perhaps in the right flash of lightning, or in the quiet footsteps behind you, the answer still lingers. Some places should just be left alone. Abandoned buildings, forgotten graveyards, especially the ones that have been sealed off for decades. But curiosity gets the best of kids, and sometimes it leads to something they'll never forget. Tonight's 8th story comes from a Reddit user u/MacuBoyNo1, who recounts a night in the late 80s when a group of kids found their way into an abandoned church. What started as an innocent exploration quickly turned into something much darker, and by the end of it, let's see what happened. Back in the late 80s, I was around 9. There was an old abandoned church near where I lived. It had been boarded up for about 20 years, steel doors and windows all over it so you couldn't get in. Out at the back of the church, there was a small, really old graveyard with about 30 headstones that had fallen over or crumbled away with age. There, we would mess about as kids, playing football, hide and seek, the usual kid stuff. Terrible doing that now thinking back. Anyway, one day, when going to the small graveyard with my 2 pals, Dennis and Robert, we noticed one of the metal doors had been vandalized and bent up at the corner, leaving just enough room for a person to fit inside. So, us being kids and nosy, went straight in there, lol. We got inside the old church and it was creepy as fuck. Paint and brickwork falling off the walls, the floorboards all warped, bent and some missing. The church benches rotten and broken. Some of the old stained glass windows had fallen in and smashed on the floor with the frames rotting away, but what I remember the most is the altar. It was higher up, maybe about 3 foot, with steps leading up either side of the floor we were standing on. On either side of the altar, there were 2 massive piles of pigeon shit. I swear, it was like a pyramid of shit where the birds had got in through a hole in the roof and sat in the rafters nesting, and probably just shitting on the same spot for 20 years, and it stank of ammonia. We couldn't handle the smell and how creepy the place was, so we went out the gap in the door fast. Anyway, that night my mate Robert must have told his older brother Michael, who was around 16, that we got inside the church through the hole in the door. His brother told Robert that he and his mates were going to go up the next night and do a seance, as one of his mates, Scott, had an Ouija board. Robert told me and Dennis this story the next day and asked if we wanted to go and do it with them. Me and Dennis said fuck that, both at the same time, but we'd hang about the wee graveyard at the back and see if anything happened. So, later that night, probably around 7:30, we were at the graveyard and saw Robert's big brother, his pal Scott, with something under his arm, and another 3 guys coming through the church gates. Scott shouted over to Robert, "Where the fuck is the bit you get in?" And Robert pointed over to the metal door with the bend in it. The 5 of them all squeezed through and got inside while we kicked a ball outside in the graveyard. They were inside the church for about 30 minutes and I said to Dennis, "Have a look in and see what they're doing." Dennis, popping his head through the gap in the metal door, and said he couldn't see them as they must have been up at the altar, and from where the door was, you couldn't see right up there. But he said he could hear them all chanting some weird shit. We were freaked out a bit and just carried on playing football. Another 30 minutes later, we heard all the 5 guys in the church screaming, then a loud thud, then them all running, scrambling and panicking to get out the hole in the door. We ran towards the front of the church fence but stopped to make sure they all got out. Scott got out first, then the other 3 boys, and Robert's older brother got out last and was covered in pigeon shit. We all just ran as fast as we could back down to the street we all lived on. Once we stopped running, we looked at all the older boys. They were all white with fear, eyes glazed as if they'd seen a ghost, and about to cry. Robert's brother sat on a wall with his head in his hands. I asked, "What the fuck happened in there? And what happened to Michael?" Robert's older brother. Scott said they were sitting near the altar doing the Ouija board, and for about 30 minutes nothing happened. Then he said the cup on the board slid over to 3 letters, O-U-T. Then Michael levitated in the air and got thrown backwards through the big pile of shit and smashed his back against the wall. Then they all scrambled to the door to get out, and every one of them witnessed and confirmed it was true. I remember Michael taking off his shit-covered jumper and throwing it in a bush and warning Robert not to tell their mom and dad what happened while wiping tears from his eyes. He also warned his mates not to say anything to anyone either or he'd beat them up, and they all agreed. It's fair to say none of us got to sleep that night. The secret about what happened lasted about a week, then everyone was calling Robert's brother Shitty, Pigeon or Birdie, and he used to get really pissed off, lol. All in all, it was funny in the end, but not at the same time. Like I say, me and my 2 mates never saw a thing, but the reaction and the story the older boys told was definitely convincing to me. I'm just glad it didn't happen to me. Kids play games. Teenagers push boundaries. But some doors once opened refuse to close. Whatever happened inside that church left its mark, not just in the whispers that spread through the neighborhood, but in the fear that never quite faded from those who were there. And as for Michael, he may have left the church that night, but something made sure he'd never forget what happened. Some things, after all, just refuse to be buried. Some places carry an energy, an old weight that lingers in the air, unseen but felt. Asheville, a city steeped in spirituality, is one of those places, but sometimes the energy isn't just in the land, sometimes it follows you home. Our 9th story comes from Reddit user u/emotional_snow_5365, who, after a string of tragedies, began experiencing something truly terrifying. What started as eerie encounters on the train tracks soon became something far worse, something that found its way inside. Hi, I'm 19, female, and I live in the Asheville area, which is a very spiritual place. As of recently, I've had a lot of deaths unexpectedly happen all within the same week. My mum passed away on Sunday, and my grandparents' dog passed away yesterday, and one of my pet rats was eaten by the other yesterday as well. Their care was perfect, and I fed them 3 times a day. There was constantly food in there, and they had a variety of things. Before all of this happened, me and my best friend would go and walk around at night. One night, we went on some train tracks and walked for about 15 minutes. I saw a dark figure in front of us about 50 feet away, but assumed it was the lighting or my brain was just trying to freak me out. But we neared a fence that had a gap underneath it, and I looked back and saw the dark figure again, about 7 feet tall. So we went underneath the fence to get off the tracks. We had an uncomfortable experience a few days before this, on the same tracks as well, but thought again it was just us being cautious. The first time we had left the train tracks, we were walking home and my best friend kept hearing something running up behind her, so we ran home. A couple of days after that, we had decided to not go on the train tracks again due to us feeling two different entities on that track. According to my best friend, one was demonic, which looked goat-like. That's the one that she saw. I saw the 7-foot tall one, but it's not demonic, I don't think. Anyways, we had gone to a creek near us like 2 days later at night, and we had a really bad feeling about going down there, but went anyways. As we were leaving, we started speed walking home, and she had to stop and tie her shoelace, and she heard and saw something behind her. Whatever it was followed us inside of our apartment and is staying in my bathroom. I'm absolutely terrified of it, and it knows that, and I can't imagine my protective bubble that I typically have because I'm so out of energy with everything happening. I had gone to sleep last night and had a vision, not an actual vision, I can explain in the comments if you ask, about it trying to possess me in our laundry room, but I didn't let it. And I remember waking up and having the urge to walk into the bathroom, but I didn't, thank God. My friend afterwards sprinkled Florida water everywhere in my room, including my bathroom. Put protective sigils everywhere and burnt rosemary. However, whatever it is, it's still there. While she was doing all of this, she heard growling from the bathroom. I just don't know what to do or how to make it leave. Please, please give me advice. Grief can leave a person vulnerable. Spirits, entities, whatever you believe in, seem to know that. Maybe something from those tracks latched on, feeding on exhaustion or fear. Protective sigils, Florida water, burning rosemary. None of it was enough. Because whatever it is, it's still there, waiting, watching. Time follows a simple rule. It moves forward. One moment leads to the next, and what's done is done. At least, that's what we tell ourselves. Sometimes reality shifts, bends, and leaves behind something impossible to explain. Reddit user u/anxious_inflation_93, who shares with us our 10th story, witnessed something no one should ever have to question: the arrival of a loved one. Twice. So, my husband came home at 1:55 p.m. today. I was sitting at my computer in the living room, had a straight view to the front door. My husband was supposed to come home at 5 p.m., not 1:55 p.m., so when I heard him opening the door, I was busy writing on my computer and was talking to my friend on the phone, so I didn't look at the door first, just listening to the sound of someone coming in. Now my thoughts were that it couldn't be my husband, since he would first be home at 5, so I thought it must be my mother, but the sound sounded like my husband, so I looked up from the screen and saw him hunched down by the door as if he was putting his motorcycle helmet in place the floor. Then I turned around towards the screen. Next time I looked back, he was standing at the dinner table removing his jacket and his motorcycle suit as he always does, although he did still have his helmet on, which he normally doesn't do. I was busy, so I looked back at the computer. Next I see is him going up the stairs without saying a word. Now he has been sick the last couple of days, and I was talking with my friend on the phone, so I thought he didn't speak a word, because he was sick and had to go home early from work and just needed to lay down in his bed, so I didn't think any of it. An hour later, I have to ask my son about something. Their rooms are right next to each other, so after talking to my son, I check on my husband. He's laying in the bed, sleeping. I go downstairs and continue the work on the computer. At 5:10, I go out to have a cigarette in our shed, and I just thought I better go up and wake him up, since he needs to cook for us tonight, since I have an assignment I need to do for school. And right in that minute, I heard a motorcycle drive into our driveway. I think, well, it can't be him, so who is it? We live far away from family and friends. Only my mother lives nearby, and at 75 years old, she does not drive a motorcycle. Maybe a postman? And lo and behold, it is my husband, returning from work? I am flabbergasted and I tell him what I have experienced. He says he has been at work all day. I remember my son was down in the living room when my husband comes home, so I run up to my son and ask him, "Did Dad not come home earlier?" believing he will say no, but then he says yes, like I am a moron for asking. What is this called? A trick of the mind, a glitch in reality, or something else? Something slipping through the cracks of time itself? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain. Her husband came home that afternoon, and then he came home again. The Appalachian Mountains hold more than just breathtaking views and winding roads. They hold stories, stories of the strange, the unexplained, and the unsettling. Reddit user u/OK_beyond_7697 didn't expect anything more than a fun getaway in a secluded cabin near Seven Devils. Snow tubing, a hot tub, and board games, but the mountains had something else in store. Our 11th story for the night starts here. So my girlfriend and her friends invited me to stay at a small cabin Airbnb in the Appalachian Mountains near Seven Devils. The idea was just to go up there and enjoy some snow tubing and then some light drinking, hot tub, and board games in the cabin afterwards. So the cabin was pretty high up in the mountain, and the drive up to it was kind of scary. Single car length road for the most part, no railings on the side of the road, so if you were on the side of the truck, which we'd rented a 4WD to make the drive up, thank goodness, it was a sheer drop on that side. Sure, if we drove off the road, we'd likely be stopped by some trees on the way down, but still a bit nerve-wracking. Another thing was some of the trees on the trail had faces on them for decoration. I think they were supposed to look cute, but they just looked kinda unnerving for most of us. I really should have taken pictures, but was too anxious during the climb. The cabin itself was almost at the top of the mountain and fairly small. A small living room with a very tiny and a narrow kitchen and 2 bedrooms. Hot tub on the lower porch, because the cabin itself was basically on the 2nd floor, so you had to go up a stairway to get into it. Key to the cabin was in a lockbox, so no special door lock option, just an old-fashioned cabin. We came back after snow tubing and dinner. The others drank enough to get buzzed, whilst I only had a glass of wine since I have a condition that makes it dangerous to get too much alcohol in my system, so relatively sober. Enjoyed the hot tub as planned, witnessed a beautiful shooting star, then played board games after that until around 1 a.m. and we all went to bed. I woke up a little after 4 a.m. because I was suddenly sweating and then I felt kinda unsettled. Decided I needed to go to the bathroom, so I got up. I left the bedroom and nothing seemed amiss, so I used the bathroom. When I left the bathroom, the front door was wide open. Naturally, I felt immediately uneasy, but again, this was a small cabin, so there was nowhere for any intruder to hide. I could easily see the entire interior of the cabin from the tiny hallway. I decided maybe the last person through the door last night after the hot tub didn't fully close the door and lock it appropriately, because there is a sign by the door that says "close door firmly," and it was fairly windy outside. I mean, the wind was howling out there. So I go over the door and close it, making sure that it's firmly enough in the doorway to fully lock it. I even jiggle the handle a few times and try to see if it'll open when locked. It doesn't budge, so I start to head back to the room. Then I hear the door rattle a bit and I turn around and stare at it. I watch the lock itself turn, and then the door opens, and it doesn't slam open from the wind. It just slowly swung open. I stayed extremely still, because of course, that was crazy. The door has a huge clear window on it, no curtains, and a big window beside it that also doesn't have curtains, and there was absolutely no one on the other side of it. There's no way someone could have ducked out of view either and hurried away from the door after pushing it open either, because they would have had to make a lot of noise hurrying down the steps to get off the walkway. Like I said, it was an old-fashioned door as well, with a simple lock and a knob. No electronic buttons or anything to unlock or lock by buttons or remotely. After getting the nerve to close the door again and locking it firmly, nothing else happened that night. I couldn't really go back to sleep because I was just too scared to do so. The following morning, I told the others about it and they were pretty spooked too, but otherwise glad we were only staying that one night. Before we packed up the truck to leave, there was this strange knocking noise coming from the surrounding woods. Not like someone knocking on a wall or door, it was a deep, hollow sounding knock that only knocked twice, stopped for a while, and then would do it again. Maybe it was just trees knocking together, but after it happened early in the morning, like that, it was a little unsettling. So yeah, I'm from Florida, and though I've experienced other paranormal activities before, that was the most physical thing I've experienced before, and I've definitely heard plenty of stories about odd occurrences in the Appalachians. In a way, I'm glad I experienced something, but I'll never forget the fear I felt. After all, my first thought was an intruder or something, and it would have been pretty bad being up there so high by ourselves. If we'd had any reason to run, we could have easily fallen off a cliff or something in the pitch black darkness outside. An old cabin, a door that wouldn't stay closed, and a presence that remained unseen. Was it the wind? A trick of the mind? Or did something in the mountains decide to welcome them in its own way? Sometimes the scariest part isn't what we see, it's what we don't see. Classrooms are predictable, structured, routine, a place where logic reigns. But every so often, something happens that defies explanation, something that lingers long after the final bell. Reddit user u/spacevault31 had been teaching for years, grounded in science and reason, never one to entertain the idea of the supernatural. Ghost stories were just stories, until the day one of their students, shaken and tearful, looked past them with wide eyes and whispered something that sent a chill through the entire room. Here's our last story for the night. Buckle up, campers. I've been a high school teacher for 10 years, and I think of this one time. One of my special education students made several comments about angels. Personally, I've never been much of a believer, but the paranormal stuff really interests me. Never seen, heard, or experienced anything paranormal. Some scary stories, videos, and such do freak me out, but it never goes beyond that. I'm a skeptic in many things. I believe in science and reason, but also believe there's something else beyond ourselves. This former student of mine has autism, plus other diagnosed medical conditions. She graduated years ago, by the way. One time during class, after finishing my lecture, she started crying uncontrollably. I went up to her to ask if she was okay and to assist her in whatever she needed. The aide that was with her escorted her out of the room in case she needed some time alone. Outside of the classrooms, we asked her what was wrong and refused to tell us as she wiped her tears. Eventually, she calmed down and went back to class. After a few minutes, assuming once she felt comfortable to talk, she told the aide that she was seeing angels around the room. She said it out loud enough that the whole class heard her. Everyone went completely silent, that you could hear a needle drop on the floor. We didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable or that she felt that she was the center of attention, so we asked if she wanted to talk about it outside again. She said no, repeated again, loud enough, that she was seeing angels around the classroom. This time she was calm, but with watery eyes. All we could do was acknowledge her and say, "That's beautiful. I'm sure they're here to protect us." She smiled, said yes, and went back to her assignment. I made my report to the diagnostician in charge of our special students. During one of our SBED meetings, grandmother, student, counselor, myself, diagnostician, and an assistant principal were all present. Everything was going fine until she started crying again in front of all of us. This time, she put down her head, and we asked if she was okay, if she needed anything, and if something was said that upset her. She said no, crying, and put her head up with eyes looking down and said, "There's an angel behind my teacher." I froze as everyone looked at me. I was speechless in that moment. I didn't feel fear. I felt some sort of peace, an inner peace I had never felt before. All I could think of was of my grandma who had passed away a few weeks before. First death in the family I had experienced. I didn't know what to say. As a way to acknowledge her, the grandmother asked her what she was seeing, and she said there was a very bright light behind me. She said it had no shape, just a bright light. Grandma asked her if she had seen the angels before, and she said yes, everywhere she goes, that they usually move around the rooms and stay behind people. The diagnostician asked why she was crying and if she was scared. She said no. She said they looked very pretty and made her happy. I asked if that was what she saw the other day in my classroom, and she said yes, that some kids had them on them and some didn't. That the lights would follow kids and stay around them while some kids had none. Until this day, it has been one of the strangest things that have happened to me as an educator. What she said in that meeting still gives me a sense of peace, as well as sadness for what she said, that some kids don't have angels behind them. I don't know if they're angels, ghosts, or what, but has anyone ever experienced or seen anything like that? A bright light, a presence that brought both peace and unease. Were they protectors as the student claimed, or was it something else entirely? Some things can't be explained, and maybe they aren't meant to be. Thank you for gathering with us tonight, campers. The fire may be fading, but the night still holds its secrets. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep the fire burning bright.
As the night gets longer and the darkness creeps in, with the eerie silence broken only by whispering wind, come gather round the fire, the flickering flames, and hear the tales of the spooky and the strange. Chill up your back, a shiver up your spine. You'll be haunted by the things that you find. Legends will unfold and stories will be told at the Scaredy Campfire, for only the